Welcome to this brief screencast on arrays and array lists. We're going to go over some basics of arrays. As you recall, you can create a numbered sequence of elements that are all the same type. So, example, we declare an array of int whose name is A, and all of the items in the array are of type int. We can create the array by saying new int and then how many ints we want. And the index of each item in the thing starts at 0. So for A, you can go index 0 through 9 because it has 10 total items. And the array has a length property that you can actually ask an array how many items it has by using the length property. So in the example that we have here, A's length is 10. So that's some of the basics. It's a same kind, it's a type just like other types in Java. You can create arrays of any kind of object or primitives in this case. There's some nice features of that Java has added so that we can use a for loop to process an array, and it's very, very common to write a for loop that goes over every item in the array. And the way to do that sort of basically is you create an int that is your index. You can call it I, started at 0. I is going to go until it's not less than the length of the array, and we increment I, and then we do something to each item in the array. We print it out, we add them together, we look at them, we do things to them, whatever. So Java has applied a for each loop that simplifies our doing this, and this structure is slightly different. You actually say for, same for keyword, but then you declare a variable of the type of the array. So in this example, we have an array of strings, name list, and so we say for string name, and we could have called it anything we want, colon the array, and what that's going to do is going to initialize name to each item in name list, starting at 0, going all the way to the end. And so name is the value of each item in the array, and so we can print out each item in the array. So for each string name in the array name list, you can think of the way to say for each string name in the array name list, that's sort of what you see that there. And so name is going to take on the value of each of the items in the list, or in the array. Got to think about it that is the values in the array, not the actual array elements. So if you say for int item in the array int list item equals 17, that doesn't change the array because you take the equivalent of saying for do the int I equals 0, I less than int list length, I plus plus, you declare this variable item, you assign it the value in the array, and then you change the variable. Well, that didn't change the array. It just changes the variable, which does not affect the array at all. So that's one of the things you got to think about, is that it only gets the values in the array. You can't update the array using a for each. Another sort of drawback, not necessarily drawback, but an issue with for each is you have no way of controlling what elements of the array you look at. You have to look at all the values in the array. You can't go the odd ones or the even ones, or from 5 to 10, or everything but the last one. You have to do the loop over all of them. You also don't know in the loop, they do it in order, but you don't have the I, which tells you which index you're at. You just get the value is set. So it's a slight drawback. You can always use the for int I equals 0, I less than array.length, I plus plus, and therefore you have more control over, do I want to update that array item or do I not want to? But the for each is a nice convenient way to loop over all the items in the array. The next thing is to talk about the concept of method arity. The arity of a method is simply the number of parameters in that method. In Java 5, which was several years ago, they introduced the concept of a variable arity method, meaning that you can say, I don't know in advance how many parameters this method's going to have. A good example is the system.out.printf method. You've already seen that, you've used it. It takes a format string, and in the format string you have references to some number of additional parameters. And we don't know how many additional, because it depends on what the string says, is how many parameters you need to supply to your printf. So it uses the concept of the type and 3 dots or 3 periods after it. So in the example right here, we have a public static double average. Its parameter is of type double, but it's an arity, multiple arity, so you can supply a bunch of numbers, more than one double, or 1 or more, or 0 or more. And so inside the method, the parameter numbers is of the type an array of doubles. So you can actually pass in an array of doubles to this multiple arity method. Or you could actually supply with commas the values if you wanted to do it that way. Now, the multiple arity parameter must be the last parameter in the declaration of your subroutine. It makes no sense that if you said double dot 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 numbers comma string, well, it doesn't know how many doubles are supposed to do, so it has to be the last parameter, because then then Java can figure out how many items are in that, how many items are in the arity parameter. So it's got to be the last parameter. So you could say string x comma double dot 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 numbers is fine. Here's an example. We already talked about the declaration. So this is going to calculate the average of some number of doubles. So you created a local variable sum, assign it to 0. We use our for each. So we're going to take the double value is going to have each of the values in the array numbers. We add that to the sum, and then we return sum divide by numbers.length, which is how many items we've added up, and that is the average. So it's very simple, where we're using a multiple arity parameter and the for each for loop to easily or quickly calculate the average of these doubles. And what's the last thing we want to talk about is the idea of array literals. So we can initialize arrays with a list of values. That's the array literal. So in the first example, we have an array of ints called squares, and it is initialized to the squares of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Now we can also use an array literal if we use the new operator. So the first one is you can only do it when you declare the array. If I already have an array declared, but I want to use the array literal, I can use it with the new, and I give it the type and then the array, and then I give it the actual values in the list. So you can see it's new, the type, square brackets, and then open curly brace and a list of values and close curly brace. And you can do this for any base type. You can do it for strings, you can do it for primitives, you can do it for your own instances, your own objects. We could do it for the dice, pair of dice, or whatever we want to do. We just say new base type, and then we supply a list of values where you might call new pair of dice, provided that thing, comma, new pair of dice, another thing. You can do it that way. So we can actually use this for any type and actually initialize the values in the array in one step. Thank you very much for your attention. Very quick overview of arrays.